She got stoned because some gangsters A woman got stoned somewhere in Bangkok, Thailand. Apparently, she got stoned because some gangsters drugged her so she would become an addict. Those gangsters came to another room where a woman was lying there. They found and kidnapped that woman on the street. Before they took that woman to their boss, they took turns sleeping with her. Across the street, there was a bald man called Curdy who was having a meal at a food booth. Not long after that, the gangsters came out of their place. Curdy got up from his seat and did this to them. Turned out, Curdy came to that place to attack those gangsters. He brought a duffel bag and approached the location of the explosion. There was a man called Opoe inside of the duffel bag. He was an enemy of those gangsters. Curdy shot a gangster who was still alive. He handed Opoe his gun. It seemed like Curdy wanted to pit Opoe's gang against the gangsters. When Curdy was about to leave, he saw a beautiful woman called May who had been witnessing the situation. An hour later, an executive of the gang called Advisor Bun received an information that his subordinates were killed by Opoe's gang by using a bomb. Advisor Bun was very disappointed to hear that Opoe's gang did that. He told his subordinate to attack Opoe's gang at midnight. Curdy met a man who had ordered him. Apparently, Curdy was a hitman. The man who ordered him was called Asep. Asep wanted to kill the gangsters because the gangsters had made his daughter as a slave for them. He asked Curdy to find his daughter soon. On the second floor of a club, some men bet against a man who was blindfolded. The blindfold man was called Jimmy. He was an illegal arms dealer. When he went downstairs, he saw Curdy was staring at him. Jimmy ran away immediately. Curdy chased him. Finally, Curdy managed to catch Jimmy. Curdy told Jimmy that he wanted to see him because he needed some weapons. Jimmy was pleased to hear that because he thought Curdy came to kill him. After that, Jimmy took Curdy to a warehouse. Apparently, that warehouse was Jimmy's armory. Jimmy chose a sniper rifle that he would use to kill the gangsters from Advisor Bun's gang. Then, Curdy went to a tower of a temple to execute his plan. There was a nightclub that was owned by Opoe's gang in front of the temple. Curdy believed that the gangsters would come there to attack Opoe's gang because of the early incident. Behind the temple, there was a place where the monks lived. Curdy kept his money that Asep gave him inside of the floor in that tower. Then, he broke a stair so he would know if someone came to that place. After that, Curdy prepared his weapon and ate his favorite meal, lentil rice. Suddenly, May came to that place. May was the person who showed up after the bomb explosion. Curdy asked May why she came to that place. May said that she was following Curdy because she wanted to help him. When Curdy heard that, he tied May up immediately because he was afraid if she thwarted him. But not long after that, he untied her soon because he pitied her. He asked her to wake him up if there was a fight at the nightclub of Opoe's gang. A few minutes later, the gangsters from Advisor Bun's gang came to the club to take revenge. They still thought that their gang members were killed by Opoe's gang. May woke Curdy up quickly. Curdy woke up and did this. Screamed in fright because it was the first time for her to witness a mass murder in front of her eyes. The next day, Advisor Bun and his subordinate met the leader of the gang who was in the middle of a ritual. Advisor Bun told the gang leader that their gang members were killed by a sniper that didn't belong to Opoe's gang. Curdy found out that May had been enslaved by the gangsters. Because of that, May offered her help to Curdy. Curdy asked May to tell him the address of the gang's office. As they arrived there, Curdy was surprised because the gangsters were not members of an ordinary gang like he thought they were before. Curdy came to meet Asep to get his money, but suddenly, he did this. Curdy was mad at Asep because he had given him a dangerous mission. Before accepting the mission, Asep told him that Curdy's target was only an ordinary gang. Curdy said that he was still willing to do his mission as long as Asep paid him 3 times. Asep agreed immediately. At night, the gang leader, Advisor Bun, and their subordinate brought a white elephant with them as a symbol of truce. They visited that place because they wanted to stop fighting with Opoe's gang. The gang leader realized that his gang and Opoe's gang were pitted against each other by someone. Meanwhile, Curdy and May were watching them from the tower of the temple. The next day, Curdy came to meet Jimmy to ask for new weapons. Jimmy refused his request because he knew that Curdy was targeting the biggest gang in the country. Jimmy didn't want those gangsters to know that he was the person who supplied weapons to Curdy. But Curdy insisted on getting weapons and threatened Jimmy. Because Jimmy was afraid that Curdy would become violent, he took him to an armory. Apparently, the armory was inside of a boat. After Curdy saw Jimmy's special weapons, suddenly he did this to Jimmy. He did that so that Jimmy could pretend that he had been robbed if the gangster found out that Jimmy helped him. At night, in the tower of the temple, Curdy told May that he would come to a building in front of the gang's office. As he arrived at the building, he aimed at the office and killed the gangsters. Curdy was shooting those gangsters, there was a sniper from the gang who was aiming at him from another building. Curdy was shot by him, but he still could survive. He realized that the gangsters would surround him soon, so he left his special weapon and ran away immediately. Curdy attacked 2 gangsters and stole their truck. Even though Curdy was attacked by the gangsters, he finally managed to escape from that place. In the middle of his journey, he realized that there were several people inside of that truck. When Curdy opened the door, he saw May and several women there. He told those women to get out of that truck, but they didn't want to because the gangsters had made them become addicts. They were also afraid because they believed that the gangsters would look for them. On his way home inside of a taxi, Curdy asked May why she could get in there. May told him that she tried to rescue those women, but she failed. After May saw Curdy's wound, she took him to the monks so they could treat his wound. The gangsters found the weapon that was used by Curdy. They thought about Jimmy immediately. It seemed like they knew that the weapon belonged to Jimmy. Jimmy told them that he had been robbed. Luckily, Advisor Bun believed what Jimmy said, but he told Jimmy that his gang would watch him. The monks managed to cure Curdy. Then, May took care of Curdy in the tower of the temple. Several nights later, Curdy attacked some gangsters and took their phone. After that, he came to meet Jimmy to ask for some weapons that could be used at short distance. On their way to the armory, the gang leader called his subordinate on phone that had been stolen by Curdy. Curdy told him that his subordinate had died and he was the person who had killed him. He also told him that he would stop attacking them if he freed the women that had been enslaved by them. When the gang leader heard that, he told Curdy that these women were sold by their own parents. Meanwhile, the rest of them were homeless women on the streets. As Curdy arrived at Jimmy's armory, he took some weapons that he would use. After that, he looked for Asep because what the gang leader had told him was different from what Asep had told him. He was following Asep, who was heading to a place where women were sold. Curdy pretended to order a woman and entered a room. He asked that woman who Asep was and where he was right now. That woman told him that Asep was their boss and he was upstairs. Curdy looked for Asep immediately, but the woman screamed. Curdy got into a fight with Asep's subordinates. Curdy defeated Asep's subordinates one by one. Finally, he managed to catch Asep. Curdy asked Asep what was actually happening and what Asep actually wanted. Because Asep already got cornered, he told Curdy that he was actually a son of the gang leader and the story of Asep's daughter who got kidnapped was only a lie. He also told him that his true intention was to damage Advisor Bun's reputation because he heard that Advisor Bun would take the gang leader's place. Apparently, Asep was jealous because his father chose Advisor Bun to be his successor instead of him. Asep offered Curdy a great amount of money if Curdy could kill Advisor Bun. When Curdy heard that, he accepted his offer instantly. Jimmy was being tortured by the gangsters because they found out that Jimmy had supplied weapons to Curdy. After he had been tortured relentlessly, he told them that Curdy made him do this. Curdy was heading to the gang's office to kill all of them. He killed Bun's subordinates one by one. He also managed to kill Advisor Bun. Unfortunately, it was only Curdy's dream. The gang leader and Advisor Bun discussed about how they could catch Curdy. Advisor Bun suggested him to involve some corrupt policeman to find him. Suddenly, Asep came to their room. He said that Advisor Bun wouldn't be able to take care of this problem and Asep was the only person who could take care of it. After the gang leader heard that, he told Asep to get rid of Curdy. Jimmy was still at the gang's nightclub. He pretended to go to the toilet to call Curdy on phone. Jimmy told Curdy to run away quickly because he had revealed his identity to the gangsters. When Curdy heard that, he asked Jimmy if Jimmy could take May with him. He promised to pay Jimmy a great amount of money if Jimmy could take May with him. Jimmy accepted his request instantly because he was going to be freed by the gangsters soon. When Jimmy came out of the toilet, Asep approached him. Apparently, Jimmy had worked together with Asep all this time to damage Advisor Bun's reputation. Asep asked Jimmy where Curdy was. Jimmy answered that he had told Curdy to flee from the country. After Asep heard that, he told Jimmy to lure Curdy to their place. Asep wanted to kill Curdy and brought his head to the gang leader so he could convince the gang leader that he was better than Advisor Bun. At first, Jimmy refused his request because their plan was only to damage Advisor Bun's reputation and not to kill Curdy. But Asep forced Jimmy into doing it. He also threatened Jimmy that he would kill Jimmy if he refused his order. Curdy came to the tower of the temple to meet May. Curdy gave clothes to May as a present. He told her that he would return to Africa and his friend, Jimmy, would pick her up. Before he left, he gave some money to be used by May and Jimmy. Curdy came to an airport because he wanted to flee from the country. Suddenly, Jimmy called him on phone. He asked Curdy where he was. Curdy said that he was at airport. He asked Jimmy if Jimmy had picked May up. Jimmy told him that he had visited the Tower of the Temple, but he didn't find May there. He only found the money. After Curdy heard that, he realized that Jimmy had trapped him. Not long after that, the gangsters arrived at the airport to catch Curdy. Luckily, Curdy had realized it sooner. He attacked one of the gangsters' drivers and stole their car. He was heading to the Tower of the Temple. As Curdy arrived at the Tower of the Temple, he didn't find May. He only found the clothes that he had given to May there. He realized that May had been kidnapped by the gangsters. He was heading to the gang's office. Then, he did this. Curdy managed to aim his gun to the gang leader. He told them that he would buy all women who had been enslaved by them. When the gang leader and the gang advisor heard that, they agreed to sell those women to Curdy because the police had been suspecting their crime. But before they sold them, the gang leader asked Curdy about the person who had sent Curdy. Curdy told him that Asep was the one who had sent him. Asep was mad at Curdy. He tried to shoot Curdy, but luckily Jimmy shot him first. Then, Curdy asked where May was. They told him that there was no woman there who was called May. Curdy saw May's picture on the wall and showed that picture to the gang leader. Apparently, May was the first woman who was enslaved by them 30 years ago, but she had died a long time ago. It meant that the woman who had accompanied Curdy all this time was May's ghost. Curdy thought that May's ghost came to him because she wanted him to free those women from being enslaved. After the gang leader received his money, he told Curdy and Jimmy to leave. In the middle of the journey, Curdy got off the truck. Meanwhile, Jimmy continued to take those women to a place where they could get some help. Curdy saw May's ghost thanking him.